What's up, Resource Nation? Welcome back to another Masterclass edition with our good friend and no stranger to our show, Barry Habib. He's been here many, many times, but Barry, buddy, it's been a while, so we wanted to have you back. Thanks for joining us, man.
I'm excited to be here with you always, man. I love being here.
I got a long laundry list of questions from myself and from the Resource Nation, so we'll get to them, but I do want to touch on a piece of content that you dropped last week with Ivy Zelman, which I honestly think is one of the best pieces of content put out in the real estate and lending space. Guys, if you haven't seen it, we will put a link below. You need to go watch that and really set aside, don't multitask, don't be doing loans or writing offers. Really listen into what Ivy and Barry are saying, because again, it's one of the best pieces of content in our space. You can't, and Barry knows this, you can't go to CNN, you can't go to Fox, you can't go to MSNBC and get educated like you can on Barry's piece of content that he put out last week. So MBS Highway team, kudos to you. Ivy, kudos to you. Real quick, I want to
I also want to mention, give credit to Megan Anderson. She did a great job on that call too.
Crushed it. Megan's always good. Part of the MBS Highway crew, like second to none. Again, guys, like Drive-By Media is going to maybe hit one or two talking points. You're not going to be able to see two uber smart people debate back and forth their points, educated points, not just what they thought about that day, but actually educated points is how they got to that conclusion. Ivy talked about a report that I looked into because I follow her. The report that one of the reports is it cost a consumer $5,000, guys, to get. And so these aren't just empty opinions. These are very educated people. So Barry, I want to distill down that conversation. I'm going to throw it to you to kind of give me your takeaways. But first, from what I watched it a few times now, the basis point of Ivy's position was household formation, right? It seemed like it had been on a decline. She said it's been on a decline from 2010 to 2020, lowest since 1930, I think she said. So fewer households, and I think in her point, eventually means less demand. She felt like if you could take the constraints off on supply, that we would have maybe a supply of 1.5 million per year with only a demand of 1 million. So that left a gap of 500,000. You guys kind of debated that point back and forth. She talked about the Resi class being the prettiest girl in the at the dance. Really interesting point of view. I 100% agree. She talked about 75 billion being unlevered capital earmarked just for single family rentals. That was interesting. 23% cash buyers. This is where you guys differed. 2022 appreciation up 3% with a decline of 1% in 2023. That was interesting, and we'll get to that. I know you'll comment on that. 67% of homeowners are locked in below 4%. That was really interesting. You guys had a really good back and forth with that. Builders building the lowest square footage in decades. Interesting point. She had a GDI index that she referenced where all these new homes are on an index of 0 to 100 are being built in areas where she graded them a 10. And she said, hey, Barry, New York would be 100. And so she didn't really like that a lot of this new construction was being built in areas that maybe isn't of high demand. Interesting. Homeowners being kind of locked into their home because of having such a great, affordable, low rate. They didn't really want to lose that. Interesting point. But with all that, Barry held his own and kind of brought, his homework too and said, I still think buying is good today. I still think that we see double-digit appreciation rates moving forward, at least for the next 2 years. You did say that we may see recession-like conditions in 2023. So long intro. Finally, to throw it to Barry, go, hey man, tell us what are the biggest takeaways in your opinion from that conversation for realtors, lenders, and consumers. And then also, did you change your opinion on that conversation? Or any other takeaways that we should know?
No, I still believe that we have demand outstripping supply, and we could just go through some of those points, which I think are very valuable. Right, you do such a great job, and those, you always have such a great show, and one of the reasons is because you clearly do so much research and homework in advance, and you hit all the points correctly. I think that when you review some of the points, and I'd love for you to kind of just go over them really quickly with me one more time, step by step, so we can kind of address them. I think the first one that you pointed out was that we have. Well, tell me the very first one that you
Well, let's
discussed.
just go with her original kind of basis. The foundation of everything was household growth slowing, right? And then
So on a percentage basis, it's slowing, but in absolute numbers, it's growing. So there's a big difference there. So percentage of household growth is declining, but absolute numbers are still growing. So we are still seeing household growth. And then when you take a look at the numbers that you said as far as the imbalance, if we get 1 million, it should be over 1 million in household growth that we see. And 1.5 million homes, I don't see that, by the way. I don't see 1.5 million homes, but let's just say you do. There's demand destruction because of homes. There's, let's say, 400,000 homes that, I'm sorry, 100,000 homes that comes out of that. So even at its crazy number of 1.5 million, it'll be 1.4 million, 1.4 million versus 1 million. That would be negative 400,000. Well, right now we're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of undersupply by at least 1 million to 1.5 million homes. If that's the case, then you can make an argument that the real estate market remains relatively tight. It's super tight now, but relatively tight for the next 3 years, even if that trend were to continue. So, as we try to forecast this out, it's very hard to forecast 80 years down the road. Okay. It's easier, certainly, to try to forecast for a year down the road. So we try and keep it a little bit short. And here's the thing, if home prices go up in the next 2 to 3 years, then even if they flatten out or come down, you still have gotten so much that you've done as far as that price goes, that this will be a very good, to use the term, trade to do this. Okay. So it'll be a good execution of a trade where you will be profitable. So I do see double digits for the next year in appreciation. Of course, it's different by every zip code. She sees 3%. I just don't think that this ship turns on a dime. And in 2023, she's banking on rates going up. I think the rates probably circle back down a little bit as inflation abates a little bit and as the slowdown in the economy, because the wearing off of the stimulus takes place. So I think the real estate prices are in a maintenance mode there. I see maybe 4 or 5% there. Certainly not crazy, but not at the torrid pace that we were at today, which I think is healthy. It's a good thing. But I don't think that prices start coming down dramatically. Now, certainly they will in certain markets in certain areas. Okay, so that's where we differ there. But go ahead, let's keep going step by step.
Yeah, and even if they do slow down to 10%, we talked about it on the show a while back. Like the markets may not be going 120 miles an hour; it may be just slowing to 80 or 90 miles an hour. But still, 10% is an amazing
Well,
appreciation.
5% is amazing. 5%
Right,
is amazing. If you
right.
put if you buy a home with 10% down, 5% is 50% on your investment. That's pretty darn good money to be made on your investment.
So in general, to distill down a 41-minute conversation, that was amazing. She made a point of why she felt like excess supply was going to be an issue. You're saying, well, that may be a thing, but we still have so much demand that at least in the foreseeable future, it's still going to be a strong market. There,
All you're doing is eating in there's an undersupply right now. So you'll be building up the undersupply before you reach a level of equilibrium. It will be a while. And markets tend to go past equilibrium. We see that all the time. It never goes to here. It goes like this and then back like this. So it's always overdone. So to get to equilibrium, it probably takes at minimum 2, probably 3, maybe 4 years, because I think she's underestimating the amount of household formations that there will be. I don't think you're going to have the 40-year-old virgin. Not people are going to be living with mom and dad till they're 40. And if you look at birth rates from 33, 32, 31, 30, 29, 28 years ago, the numbers do this in birth rates. And I think immigration increases. So I think she's underestimating those numbers. With respect, I have tremendous respect for Ivy. She's brilliant, but nobody's perfect, So I think that we do see a little bit more than she's anticipating in household formation. And I don't think we get the builders to put up as many homes because they're running, land is tight, worker shortages, appliances with chips. There's a host of issues that are going to inhibit a flood of new homes coming on the market as easily as perhaps people might think.
you guys talked about the constraints a lot, and it's obviously the most relevant point with anything. I mean, even today, you guys talked about on MBS Highway about shopping for Christmas early because of the restraints on supply. Any insight on when that actually lightens up and we can try to get back to somewhat normal?
They say that a chip shortage may persist for a while. Now there's a shortage of magnesium, which is important in cars and things like that. So I don't know that this market is going um, to make a very quick turnaround. Eventually, will it happen? Yeah, ingenuity will take over, but it does take time. It really does take time for these things to alleviate themselves. Because you have it on both ends. You have it on the actual product, but you also have it on the workers. So it's perplexing as to why the worker shortage is there. Yes, it is true that baby boomers are perhaps electing or opting for retirement a little bit earlier. COVID definitely taught us that. And people who didn't work, now it's a little bit different to go back to work. That commute is harder when you haven't done it. So people are saying, yeah, maybe I'll just kind of hang it up a little early. And that's definitely putting a bit of a strain on workers. there are also people that have made a lot of money in these assets. Thank the Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen monster that was created when they started punishing savers and made assets the only choice to put your money. And because of that self-fulfilling prophecy, asset values have gone up, things like cryptocurrencies have gone up. So a lot of young people have made an awful lot of money in that. So maybe there's not the desire to wait a table, because I've just made much more than that in cryptocurrency. I've made 2 years worth of earnings in the last 3 days. So, why should I wait tables? I'll turn.
Yeah. You guys talked about an interesting point, and I don't know if there's a huge takeaway there, but I just found it interesting. You guys were talking about transitory renters due to COVID and the amount of capital that's being invested into single family development. Um, what's weird is I 100% see that being in the industry, but also doesn't that lead to more demand if there's institutional capital coming in to build single family homes? As much as we don't like that because that steals a home from a family and gives it to an investor, that still equals demand, right? Am I seeing that wrong?
No, it does equal demand, but the thought process is that at some point in time that turns over and it goes into eventually a family that's going to be moving into that property. So, does that supply then come to the market home to roost? Even if it's a renter, the thought process is, and this is Ivy's argument, and she does have a lot of merit here, is that as some of the purchase, um, pressure to move home prices higher, on the purchase side, is due to the fact that renters are there's no picnic for a renter, with rents up 20% on new rents and up 5 to 8% every year. That's punishing them every year. So let me move out of renting and do this. But if there's more supply on the renter side, well, then those pricing pressures from rents become more friendly. And maybe some of those people don't decide that they have to purchase, but they go back to renting. And that takes a little bit of air out of the pressure of the purchase side. I get that, which is why we think that appreciation does settle, but it's not going to happen that quickly. And it's also not going to be in a position where, we're going to have an enormous influx, because people do realize that on the purchase of a home, there are other advantages, one of which is not financial, one of which is that the freedom to do things to the home and live a certain lifestyle, which you may have more freedom to do that and have more limitations under the constraints of what a landlord may allow you to do. So, some of it is intangible and some of it is very tangible when you consider appreciation, when you consider that a big chunk of your payment every month, those of us in the mortgage industry that educate people on the decision to buy versus rent, explain to them and show them how much of every payment would go towards principal. That's like putting money from your left pocket into your right pocket, your own money. It shouldn't be counted as an expense. So oftentimes when that's factored in and contemplated, the monthly payment is much cheaper on a purchase than it would be renting.
Yeah, and COVID taught us about our homes. You kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but having a home that actually meets all of your needs became a big issue last year, and still is. Like I have an open floor plan, just because that's how we designed it. I don't have a spot where I can work, and so now that's highlighted all the inefficiencies of my home, because you're there a lot longer than say going to work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 7, and then just coming home for dinner and then sleeping. And so it's highlighted all the areas of the home that you live in, like, oh, I actually do need a private office or a den or maybe an extra room. So COVID taught us that as well. You touched on this already, but I know it's a hot topic. Talk to us about why you see recession-like conditions in 2023.
Because the stimulus tends to wear off, and we have an economy that's not on its own, without the training wheels or without the adrenaline, is not as vibrant as you would think. So when we look at the 2.8 trillion in stimulus in the spring of 2020, by the fourth quarter, it already worn off. When we look at the 900 billion, the 1.9 trillion in stimulus between December 2020 and March 2021, we're already seeing third quarter GDP hover right around 2%. Let's remember that the initial estimates from the Cleveland Fed and from the Atlanta Fed were for 9%. And they said, 6, then 3, coming in at 2. That's after a very, very, very significant amount of stimulus. Now, I know we got another stimulus and we may have one beyond that, but eventually that's going to stop. We can't have stimulus infinity. So we're already seeing the pressures of inflation because of all this stimulus, and people are complaining. We just hit the strategic petroleum reserve, which maybe if you didn't shut down the oil producers, maybe if we didn't have it so that we were constraining oil production, that we wouldn't have as much inflationary pressure. So people are getting restless, and people in this country are feeling the pinch, and there's going to be pressure to eventually stop. And this is a bipartisan feeling now that inflation is a problem that needs to be addressed. And inflation causes rates to rise. That's why we thought rates would rise. We were correct on that call. And why, let's see if we're correct on this. We think that rates continue to rise a little bit as the inflation numbers we're going to get will be higher by about 1% over the next 3 months than they are right now. So we're going to get, as we record this, we'll get an inflation reading on PCE tomorrow, which I think will have inflation readings jump maybe 0.4 to 0.5% on a year-over-year basis in just one monthly reading. And that's going to be eye-opening. That's going to put the core rate of the personal consumption expenditure, PCE, above 4%, first time in a very, very long while. And we have a break-even inflation number that's very negative. The inflation break-evens, take the 10-year treasury, 1.6%. Let's just use either whether the headline or the core or the CPI is higher than the PCE, take a 5% number. That means if you invest in the 10-year treasury, you're getting 1.6, but you're losing 5% to inflation, you're losing 3.4%. You're losing that. This is a multi-decade low or high, however you look at the number. So this imbalance doesn't last forever. Either something gives, either inflation alleviates itself. I'm telling you, inflation is going to get worse, or the real interest rate has to be improved by taking the actual interest rate and moving it higher. Real interest rate is net of inflation. So I think that we do see a little bit of a move higher in interest rates, probably over the next few months. But to answer your question, this is a long way to answer it. I know, I'm sorry. I do think that what we will see is as the stimulus eventually does wear off, slow down the economy. Maybe it's 2023. It's very hard, Ryan, to kind of, the further you got to forecast, the harder it is.
But isn't that the easiest way to slow this down? I think you mentioned it in one of the MBS highway updates this week that June 2022 is the first expectation of a Fed rate hike. So if we make money more expensive, isn't that the easiest way? And why wouldn't they do that sooner?
Because the stock market will throw a fit, and the Fed's afraid of the stock market. And now, not only do you have a super dove in Jerome Powell, but you don't even have a backbone as your vice chair. You have, well, if I only had a brainer, so it's like, these are dangerous people that, you have Janet Yellen as your Treasury Secretary. That's a trio of people that are fanning the flames of inflation. They are really doing so. They really should open up a history book, and they should, they're mad scientists that have never so much as had any kind of business world experience or real life experience that are pricing the most important commodity in the world, and that's the price of money. And these people, unfortunately, are in a very responsible position, but are acting very irresponsibly, in my opinion. And the second that the stock market throws a fit, because remember now what they have done, the Janet Yellen and Ben Bernanke monster that was created was, we will punish you to save and force you to put all your money into the only game in town, TINA, there is no alternative, TINA, into very risky assets, because it's the only way you can get a rate of return. And because of that, as soon as the stock market takes a hit because they don't have the juice anymore, like a drug addict, once they start to, to act up, the Fed, just like they've always done in the past, will kowtow to them, and you'll have more QE infinity. You'll have no ambition to raise rates. Forget June of 2022. That's a pipe dream, because the Fed by then will have stopped the buying. Here's how they respond to inflation. Oh, we're stimulating too much. How do we cut back? Let's put in another $1 trillion of stimulus, because that's what it is between now and June. Don't forget, they're buying $67 billion in reinvestment in mortgage bonds. They don't count that. They're saying, oh, well, we're just reinvesting it. Well, that's like, let's not count any food purchases, because I'm just reinvesting it right after I go to the bathroom. Okay. I mean, it's such a stupid argument. So they are stimulating the economy to an extraordinary extent when you should not be doing this. You're just going to fan inflation even more. They're just not getting it. And
is that going to infinity? Are we just never is the music never going to stop?
Some people believe in QE infinity. Yes. Some people believe in QE infinity. Yes. So
we've learned that lesson already, though. That's why you said they should open a history book.
They really should open a history book. Look at what happened in the Weimar Republic. I'm not saying that we reach those levels, but inflation, once it's out of the bottle, it is very hard to contain. And I think they're being pretty pompous in thinking that they have the ability to contain this thing as easy as possible. Now, I know we want to get back to the Ivy argument, but those are concerns. Now, if we do see a slowdown in the economy in 2023, then more than likely, yes, inflation will slow down. And thank goodness there's technological advances out there that will slow down inflation, but we might be in a recession-like condition in 2023, which should be accompanied by lower rates.
Man, you organically hit all my questions that I had, so I don't need to go through any more, man. You already hit them, so I appreciate it. I know we only got you
Well, I
for
want
a short
to
amount
talk
of
about the
time.
one thing that Ivy mentioned was being locked into your home, because you did mention that, right? So I don't buy the argument, um, because let's just say if rates, first of all, everybody doesn't have a 3% rate, but let's just say you do, and let's just say rates go to 4. So the first thing is you got a double whammy, because if I'm going to move up, I'm going to move up. So I'm going to buy a more expensive home, right? So by buying a more expensive home, what happens there? Well, the value of that home, let's call it $100,000 more. That's not uncommon, not unreasonable or unrealistic. I know in some markets that's a lot, some markets that's not enough. I get it, but so that's $500 a month, right? I mean, think about it. If I mortgage the whole thing, it's $500 a month. Now, by the way, when I bought this home, I might have needed MI. Now in the new home, because I made so much equity on my old home, I probably don't need MI. So in 40% of the cases, I've mitigated that $500 cost already. People don't think about that. So, but let's just say I don't. So it's $500 a month, right? To buy that home. On top of that, now the rate's gone up. So the rate's going to cost me another $300 a month. That's $800 a month. Bro, that's a car payment today. With what's going on today, $800 a month, not to mention the potential benefits from a tax deductible side, which may also mitigate that to some degree. That's not going to stop many people. And it's not as if it's going to put a hard stop on it. Will it stop some people? Yeah, it will. It will. But it's not going to stop everybody. It's not going to put it out of reach. I think somebody will buy a car that saves them a couple $100 a month and maybe miss out on a night out of dinner, and then go out and get the home of their dreams.
Especially for the class of people you're talking about. You're talking about a move-up buyer versus somebody that's using state bond. Like, yes, of course, the state bond buyers, that 800 would crush them, but move-up buyer that just saw a couple $100,000 in appreciation, 100% agree there. Like, that's some people maybe, but overwhelming majority are going to be able to handle that situation no problem.
Yeah, and to turn this ship around, you need a very big change. Now, listen, I'm not saying that we can't ever see a point in time where home prices decline. I just don't see that in the next couple of years, and I don't see a sharp turn. I think that the housing market has too many reasons to remain well supported before we start to see home prices actually decline. That's what I'm not saying. The appreciation doesn't slow. I completely agree. I just don't see home price decline.
Man, so good. So good. And guys, I'm telling you, if you missed the initial 41-minute interview with Barry and Ivy, you got to go back and watch it. I promise you, you'll be smarter because you do. And Barry talks about it all the time. Like, we're educators. At the end of the day, like, we've got to educate ourselves so we can educate others. And that's why Barry and I do this. And that's why he did the 41-minute interview with Ivy. And I texted him right away. I was like, bro, this is amazing. Text Megan, this is amazing. Keep doing it, man. I appreciate what you do for our industry. Like, you've been doing it forever, and here you are, the Energizer Bunny. Just keep going and keep cracking out amazing content.
I hope so. I hope they keep going. But thank you, Ryan. Thank you for all the great work that you do. And thanks for everybody who's given us your time to listen to this. So I want to just personally wish everybody a blessed and a wonderful and a healthy and happy Thanksgiving with your families. Listen, things could always be better. We all want to strive for them to be better, but they sure could always be worse. We should be so grateful and thankful for all these wonderful things that we're able to do and the abilities we have and the blessings we have. So thank God for that, and wishing you all happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for allowing me to be with you, Ryan.
For sure, buddy. I hope you have a good holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and we'll have you back on soon.
You bet.
All right, guys. See you next week.